perhaps most important, feel outraged. Are you kidding me? You are being parted with your hard-earned money. You go to work to buy shit you don't need, and you're being prompted to do it by an endless flood of messages that says you're not enough, you're not good enough, you don't have enough, you'll never be enough unless you buy this insert stupid widget here. Be mad. It's okay. It's okay to be mad about this. You should be mad about this because the joy in your life will come when you connect with other people, when you have friendship. It will come when you know that your job is optional, that it's something you do because you want to, not because you have to. That's when you'll be happy.
Hello and welcome to the Optimal Agency Podcast. My name is Patrick Cummings, joined as always by John Gilson. Together with you, we are exploring the ideas of agency, diving deep to discover a set of guidelines on how each of us can best operate in the day-to-day to maximize our personal autonomy, professional freedom, and ultimately our positive impact on the world. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Hello, how are you, John?
I'm great, man. Nice and sunny here today.
Yeah, same here. Every other week, we have a longer discussion on how we can own our lives by becoming optimal agents here on the show. That's what we've got this week. Tune in next week for a shorter episode where we will answer one of your questions. This week, we're going to break down another one of our behaviors. This week, we've got our first behavior of the financially enlightened, which is do not acquire things. So we're going to talk through what that means and why it's important. We'll wrap up with a recommendation or two if you'd like to go even deeper with this idea, with this particular behavior. All right, my friend, as I like to do, as I did every time we did an episode on our rules, and as we will continue to do as we do our episodes on our behaviors, we're going to give a quick rundown of the 6 behaviors of the financially enlightened. And as just a reminder, in case you're new, 1, welcome. 2, we've got rules across health, wealth, and time. We've got behaviors that go along with those rules of health, wealth, and time freedom. We've done episodes on each one of our rules across those categories. We are just beginning to do episodes and have conversations on these behaviors. So go back through the feed if you would like to catch yourself up. Okay, 6 behaviors of financially enlightened. 1, do not acquire things. That's what we're going to talk about this week. Number 2, meet uncertainty with liquidity. Number 3, prefer the simple to the complicated. Number 4, prefer the guaranteed to the speculative. 5, automate everything. And 6, measure infrequently. So we did this the last time we did a behaviors episode, but I'd love to do a reminder. Why behaviors? Why do we not only have rules, but also behaviors that go along with those rules?
Because rules are only useful if you know how to actually implement them in the world, right? And so I want to give you the rule, and then we're going to tell you, well, what do you need to do to make this happen? And so if you want to follow our rules of wealth to increase your wealth, to increase your agency, there are ways you need to behave every day that are going to help you follow those rules. And we start here with the first behavior of the financially enlightened. Do not acquire things.
Okay, before we get into that, is this rank order? Is this like golden rule, God rule, do not acquire things? Or is this one of the cases where we need to follow all 6 of these rules because they're equally important and equally essential, and it doesn't matter which priority you put on any of them?
So the behaviors are going to have different stack rank for different people. And the question that you need to ask yourself as you go through the behaviors of the financially enlightened is, which of these do I have the most problem with? Are all of my assets illiquid? Well, you might want to focus on behavior number 2. Am I spending 4 hours a month dealing with money? Well, you might want to focus on automation. And so this one is really for those of us who have been caught up in consumer culture and it's actively harming our wealth.
Got it. Okay. Good segue in. Things, do not acquire things. Why not?
So I think it's important first to note what we mean by things. I don't mean literally any object. I mean non-essential consumer goods. Those are things you literally don't need, or things that you do need. They're essential, but they're duplicative of something you already own that hasn't reached the end of its useful life. And so this rule of not acquiring things is about really having that anti-consumerist mindset that we talk about. And it's about driving wealth rule number 3, which is spend much less than you make. If you don't acquire things, you will have a much better shot at spending much less than you make. Therefore, you'll have a higher savings rate on balance. Therefore, you'll have more wealth. That's the logical reason. Here's the emotional reason, and not that it's not logical, but here's the emotional reason. Things don't make us happy. So I want to dive into, as we get through this, what is it that will make you happy when you spend your money? What is it that won't make you happy? And how can you operationalize that in the day-to-day?
How bad are we at this in your mind? Do not acquire things. It strikes me that we are awfully bad at this. And by we, obviously, I mean like the collective of us as a society, as a culture. This strikes me as an important behavior and one that we're not particularly good at.
We're terrible at this, right? We're terrible at not acquiring things. So let's talk about this on the grand level. About 68% of the GDP, the gross domestic product of the United States, is driven by non-essential consumer spending.
Mm-hmm.
Holy crap.
Say that again. 68% driven by non-essential spending.
Non-essential consumer spending. 68% of the output of this country. Okay. And let's talk about what that means to our personal savings rate while we're at it. I went ahead over to the Bureau of Economic Analysis and looked up, which is a government organization, kind of ironic, and looked up our personal savings rate and said, well, what is it? So for the last 4 months of 2023, it averaged about 3.9%. What does that mean? It means not only do we spend almost 3/4 of our output as a country on non-essential consumer spending, we managed to save 4 cents on the dollar of our personal incomes. And so you can start to stack up. We have this huge spending problem. And the flip side of that is that we have a huge savings problem. We're literally not saving. And so if we're spending and we're not saving, we're certainly not getting wealthy, because one of my favorite sentences, and maybe one of the big takeaways from this episode, wealth is money you don't spend.
So wealth is money you don't spend. And this is something we've talked about, but it was early on in our doing of this podcast, which is that there's this irony that the economy, at least in America, the economy we live in, is it's healthiest when we're all spending all of our money on generally these non-essential consumer purchases, right? The stock market goes straight up if we're all buying things that effectively we don't need. And that runs exactly counter to the argument that we've been making here of agency and of autonomy and of personal freedom. And so is that partly why, and this gets into my question, but is that partly why we suck at this so bad? Because everything we're ever told about what makes a society, what makes an economy healthy, runs counter to what makes an individual or a household healthy and robust.
Yeah, let me see if I can unpack that a little bit, that statement. I don't think you spend money because you think it's good for the economy, right?
Right.
You're not going out and doing that. However, a lot of the incentives of our tax system are set up in a way, and a lot of the incentives of our economy in general are set up in a way for you to spend. And that looks like a media cloud of you being shown shiny new goods, of you being shown aspirational images of houses, white picket fences, new Mercedes Benzes, the latest fashion, the iPhone 47 that replaced the iPhone 46, which is now clearly inferior. You've got this cloud of things driving you towards that. At the same time, the U.S. tax code incentivizes business formation. Right. In other words, you will pay less in taxes if you filter expenses through a business than if you don't. Well, how do businesses make money? They sell things to consumers. The vast majority of them, whether those things are digital, whether those things are goods like we're talking about today, whether those things are services like going out to the restaurant, getting a massage, going on travel, taking a vacation, etc. And so when I'm incentivizing business formation, every one of those businesses now has to get customers who has to sell you things, which leads to the first thing that's really working against us. I talk about that media cloud and aspiration, but let's bring it down out of the clouds and talk about marketing and the collision of marketing and your wallet, Right?
Mhm.
So I went ahead and did a little bit of research to say, well, how much money is actually being spent to advertise to you to get you to buy these consumer goods that make the US economy spin? And in 2024, it'll be about $375 billion. And this is an election year, and that number is before political ads. Okay, so $375 billion. There are 330 million people in the United States. Okay, so what does that turn into? It's over $1,100 per person in spending on ads to get you to buy things. And 64% of that is digital ads, which means $727 in 2024 will be spent to get you to buy things. Good luck avoiding that, right? It's a massive spend with a massive reach. Okay, and so realize that's working against you. And as we get to the end of the episode and start talking about, well, what do you do about all this? How do you actually not acquire things? This is going to figure into that.
Okay. Got it. What else? What else is working against us in your words?
The hedonic treadmill. The hedonic treadmill. And if you're familiar with this concept, it's a really simple one. When you buy something, you will be momentarily satisfied with your purchase, and then you will have the desire for more or better. Okay. And this is a never-ending cycle. You can think about it as desire, then acquire, and remain unsatisfied. So this marketing is driving that. Social comparison is driving that. The quote unquote keep up with the Joneses. And neglecting to understand what types of spending will actually make you happy is driving this hedonic treadmill. And realize that it's very difficult to escape unless you're very, very aware of it. In other words, desire is a natural human function that's put right in our hindbrain. If we didn't have the hedonic treadmill, Paleolithic man wouldn't have gone looking for his next meal. And so we have to be dissatisfied with what we have on a hardwired basis to keep feeding ourselves, literally. But we haven't updated our circuitry for the 21st century. And so we still have that hedonic treadmill playing in our mind, except instead of worrying about our next meal, we're worried about our next fashion item or our next electronic gadget. So I love standing up here and talking about this kind of stuff as if I have never been on the wrong side of it. And it couldn't be further from the truth. I've been on the hedonic treadmill. I've had the hell marketed out of me. I've been a giant idiot, came into quite a bit of wealth very young, kind of about 30 years of age, and thought that I needed to, in Boston, buy into the social comparison. In other words, if I was going to be the CEO of a major company, I needed to look like it. And so I went to the mall and I bought a $1,200 Burberry jacket, and I bought a $1,000 pair of Ferragamo shoes, and I bought everything at Nordstrom that goes along with that shit. And I bought a 2011 Audi R8 V10 stick sports car. And I drove that thing from my office to the local watering hole where they sold seafood and, $15 cocktails. Brought all my friends and spent all my damn money on things I didn't need at all, and things that didn't make me happy. And I think this is the important part. It's not that I spent all that money. It's that I was miserable the entire time. Because instead of having this internal locus of value, saying, what value do I have? What value am I bringing to the world? I was saying, what value can I show other people that I have? How can I engage in social signaling to show that I'm worthwhile? And as soon as you're looking external to yourself for that validation, guess what? You're lock, stock, and barrel in that hedonic treadmill, because it's never going to be enough. Somebody's going to say nice car, but in 2 years, that car's not going to be that exciting anymore. And you're going to need the new one so that somebody else says nice car. And that blazer you bought that looks sharp might look sharp in 2 years, but you're going to need the new one because the people who know, and they know now that you're wearing fashion from 2 years ago. So lest anyone think that I'm sitting up here theoretically talking about a hedonic treadmill, I just chose to get off of it. But I got trapped on it right along with everybody else.
What do you say? Because I can sort of hear the not the criticism, but the pushback on this from somebody who, let's just say, loves fashion. Just like it just they think about it. They want the fashion, not, at least they would argue, not because of the social status, not because of all the other things that obviously are in part of it for some folks, but they just love the fashion. They love the creativity. They love the et cetera, et cetera. How do you start to delineate? Because we did start this conversation. Well, it's not all things. It's just these non-essential things. How do you start to understand this is a real thing? This is part of who I am. This is part of my value set. I really like I really like cars. I really like fashion. Whereas if you were to ask me, I would say just like, can it get you to the grocery store? And if it's anything more than, you don't need anything more than that, right? Like, does the shirt still fit? Then you're good to go.
Yeah.
So like, obviously there's a value differentiation here. And so how do you start to delineate between like, well, this is something I value for whatever reason, and I'm spending money on this because I want other people to think I have money. I want other people to think I have the latest thing, whatever it might be, right? How do you start to pick those things apart?
It's about moving to the realm of consciousness rather than semi or unconsciousness with your spending. I acquire mountain sports things at a torrid rate still today. Bikes, snowboards, tuning equipment, tune-ups, new forks, helmets, etc., etc., etc. I know what I'm doing. I know I'm buying things I largely don't need. I know how much joy it brings me, how much it puts me in a phase where I'm going to concentrate on my health. I'm going to get outdoors. I'm going to play. I'm going to play out there. And is there no hedonic treadmill? Is there no social comparison? Of course there is. You think I don't go out there with the new, this will sound funny to anybody who doesn't do it, but you go out there with the new shock on your bike and somebody goes, hey, you got a new shock. That's cool, man. Is that the new XYZ super silent double whatever, So it still happens. So what I would say is know what you're doing. Know that you're vaporizing wealth by engaging in that. So if you're going to engage in that, make sure you're doing it with 5% of your wealth, 2% of your wealth, 1% of your disposable income, not 50% of it.
Got it.
Right. And so it's a sliding scale. How rich do you need to be? How much wealth do you need to be? And at some point, frankly, you won't need more wealth. And if you want to get back on this treadmill, go nuts.
Got it. We've gone through marketing. We talked about the hedonic treadmill, all of these in line with this idea of like, why are we so bad at this? Why is collectively our savings rate, 4%? Why are we saving 4 cents on every dollar? Anything else in that list of things that is getting in the way of our increasing our savings rate and acquiring fewer non-essential things?
Yeah, it's the phenomenon of you can have it now and pay for it later, AKA debt. That's a huge problem. If you went to the car lot right now and tried to buy a new truck, the average price, I think, is about $45,000 for a truck. Do you have 45 grand? And if you did, would you throw it on that truck? Probably not. You'd go and say, what's the monthly payment on this thing? And they'd say it's $700. And you'd say, I can afford that. And the problem there isn't that you've acquired the truck. It's that you have essentially borrowed from your future self. So if you finance that thing for $700 a month for 60 months, guess what you're doing every month for the next 5 years? You're taking $700 out of possible wealth and turning it into an outflow, turning it into a consumer expenditure. And when you do that, you pay far in excess of the value of the thing you bought. So on that $45,000 truck, you might end up paying $62,000 or $63,000 from it. You can think about this, and it is mathematically equivalent to reverse compounding. So how do we get wealthy? Right? We make as much as we're able. We spend much less than we make. We invest the difference in compounding and passive income generating assets. Directly working against that is everything that you debt finance. And even perhaps more insidious than going in and saying, I'm willing to take out a loan for $45,000 is the now disguising of interest of negative compounding. So I got a couple examples. One is buy now, pay later, right after pay. that sort of thing, where they're like, hey, no problem. We'll finance this for you for one low monthly payment. Well, all they're doing is saying, look over here, look at the payment, not the interest rate. And the same thing happens. I love these personal loans that have been being offered from credit card companies. I don't know if you get any of these consolidation loans, but they're like, no, it's interest free. You're just going to make one low monthly payment for 5 months, you know? And so not only are they charging us interest, they're hiding the ball. They're hiding the ball. And so if you're going to assume debt, here's the rule. Never assume debt for a depreciating asset if you can avoid it in any way, shape, or form. What that means is there's certain kinds of debt that are okay if they're kept within check. Those might look like a student loan to learn a skill that is highly marketable. That might look like a mortgage done on a reasonably priced house that's likely to appreciate in an area that's likely to appreciate. What that doesn't look like is getting a new TV, right? Because that new TV is going to be worth scrap in 2 years. What that doesn't look like, unfortunately, is an automobile, because that's the same thing. And so, you know, what do we do about it? We're in this situation. We're not saving, right? We're saving 4 cents on the dollar. We're spending like crazy, 68% of GDP. We're buying things in hope of happiness through the hedonic treadmill that never comes. And we're using debt to compound against ourselves. So what do we do? What do? We don't acquire things. And when we acquire them, we do it with a high level of consciousness. And so I'd love to just go through some of my favorite ideas here on how do I combat this as an individual, as somebody pursuing agency in the world. And the first one is embracing stealth wealth. And of course it rhymes. So it must be true.
Good. Yep.
Must be good. Yeah. What does that mean? Stealth wealth. Get wealthy and don't act like it. Right. So you have a modest home, you have a used car, you have an old phone, you know, and this is one of our favorite terms. We've brought this one way back. Is he or she a bum or a billionaire? I don't know. I have no idea. Right. And I think it's wonderful to not know. Be wealthy and don't show it, because what that means is your needs are fairly low and you'll stay wealthy, which means you'll have agency, because at any given moment you can decide, I'm going to work that job. I'm not going to work that job. I'm going to do that project. I'm not going to do that project. And think about the opposite, right? Think about conspicuous consumption. So we've got stealth wealth versus conspicuous consumption. Well, if I've got to finance that sports car, if I've got to buy the latest fashion, if I'm doing whatever to my house, putting on solar panels because my neighbors put on solar panels, and doing that conspicuous consumption, what I'm in fact doing is reducing my agency. I'm saying, hey, I might have to go to work to finance all of this, right? I'm saying I might be engaging in reverse compounding because those solar panels came with a 7% interest rate, that sort of thing. So I want to talk about some guys that have embraced stealth wealth. And these are just some recents. But do you know who Brian Johnson is, Pat? Have you heard that name recently?
Yes. He's effectively, I think he was a former, or I don't know if you can be a former entrepreneur, but an entrepreneur who is currently in the midst of spending, I don't know, $1 million, $2 million a year in an attempt to live forever.
That's right. Yeah. And unfortunately, he also looks like a vampire.
Because he doesn't go in the sun. He's an interesting guy.
Super interesting guy, really smart guy. So he had an exit from a company called Braintree. Braintree was a payment processor. He sold it to Venmo for $800 million. Well, at least that was his share of that. And he was recently on the Rich Roll podcast, which I love, by the way. And Rich Roll's like, well, what'd you do? You got super rich. What did you do? He said, I went dog sledding. It's like, cool. Well, luckily his $800 million was still quite intact after he went for a dog sled adventure, you know? So this guy is spending $2 million a year trying not to die. He got a medical team. They're doing everything from, you know, kind of micro optimizing his diet to his exercise to his sleep, etc. He claims to have gotten a 100% sleep score every night for the last 2 years. Something like this on his whatever tracking he's used. And it's funny to me because you look at that guy and you're like, that is not stealth wealth. That is
That was
not
gonna be my
stealth wealth.
question.
That
Yeah.
guy's spending $2 million a year. And he's being loud about it. Well, here's the stealth wealth part. If you spent $2 million a year on $800 million, you'd be spending 0.25% of your wealth every year. 0.25%, not even a full percent. And guess what? If he has that money in T-bills earning 5%, he's not even spending the interest on his money. This is a man who's going to stay wealthy no matter how loud he is about anti-senolytic therapies and stem cell replacement. So I love that.
So we hear $2 million a year and we think there's no stealth about that. But your point is, in relation to what he's got, it's like you and I spending, buying an extra cappuccino every week.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's you buying him the latte. That Brian Johnson's $2 million not dying routine is a latte. So I have a new hero. His name is Daniel Norris.
Okay, I don't know who Daniel Norris is.
I didn't either until I had recalled that I had read an article about this guy and I went looking for it. So he's a Major League Baseball pitcher. And he got a $2 million signing bonus as a rookie, I believe something about 6 to 7 years ago. He's got $11 million in career earnings as a Major League Baseball pitcher. And Daniel Norris, according to this article, he lives in a 1978 camper van. So hashtag van life with Danny Norris. He reads hardcovers. He avoids TV. His rookie year after the offseason, in which he had been given a $2 million signing bonus, he went and worked retail at a local outdoor shop in Tennessee for the summer. Probably making between $10 and $15 an hour at the most.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so I was like, okay, well, that was 6-7 years ago. What's my hero Daniel Norris doing now? Guess what he's doing? He's surfing. He's still dirt bagging. He's making that money, and all the guy does is spend it on surfboards. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You would not know, looking at him for a hot second, that he was a Major League Baseball player. And I've got this story that comes from the article that I'd love to just read.
Yeah.
Because I think it's so illustrative of stealth wealth as a concept. On the morning in 2011, when his $2 million signing bonus finally cleared, Norris was in Florida with the rest of the Blue Jays' new signees. All of their bonuses had been deposited on the same day, and one of the players suggests they drive to a Tampa mall. They shopped for 3 hours, and by the time the spree finally ended, they could barely fit their haul back into the car. Most players had spent $10,000 or more on laptops, jewelry, and headphones. Norris returned with only a Henley t-shirt from Converse, bought on sale for $14. It's been a fixture of his wardrobe ever since.
Yep.
Love you, Dan. Keep it up, buddy.
I want to get into some sort of the actions, the takeaways, the part of this conversation. And I think maybe to get into it, one question or one thing to point out, which is that I think embedded in this conversation that we're having about do not acquire things. We talked a little bit about it in terms of being more conscious of it, right? Bringing consciousness to these decisions and making sure that our values are part of those decisions. And thinking back to an episode or two ago where we talked through sort of I forget what we called it, but sort of your hierarchy of values, right? Mm-hmm. Where there was, and again, family, outdoor sports, and et cetera, right? And you can obviously remind us of those if it's useful. But my point in bringing all that up is, I think in order to really understand and begin to put into practice this behavior, this do not acquire things behavior, is you've got to replace what the marketing and what culture is trying to put there, which is this idea that you need more things. And more than that, you deserve more things. You deserve the latest iPhone. You deserve a really nice car. You deserve the Burberry coat. You've earned it, right? And so in order to combat that, and I think it's what our conversations are, is in order to combat that feeling, that thought, is you've got to replace it with, no, agency is the most important thing to me. my family, my health, my relationships, my ability to say no to some work so I can say yes to other work. It has to live higher on the hierarchy of values to you than whatever it is that makes us think, I really need that thing, that new car, that next iPhone, that Apple Vision Pro thingy, right? Like we've got to replace one with the other. And I just think that's really important to understand is like, we can give you all the actions, all the tactics, all the things to do. But if you don't have that in place, you will likely divert to, oh, that's really nice. Yeah, I can get that. I can afford that monthly payment.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we could boil most of optimal agency down to question the default behavior. When you look around and you see a whole lot of other people doing something, ask yourself, why are they doing it? Should I be doing it too, or should I avoid it? Our default posture is usually you should avoid it because we see this on a wide basis. People are unhappy. They're depressed. They spend all their time working. They wish they had more free time, and they regret that they don't build their relationships and their friendships. And so you look around and you say, do I want what everybody else wants? Probably the answer will be no, at least to some degree. Because that just kicks off a cycle of the actual hard part of agency, which is, what do you want? What does get you up? What does fire you up? What does make you happy? And it's not going to be stuff, not on an enduring basis, right? And so when we talk about my values, which are my family, not being stressed is my second value, autonomy, the third, mountain sports is the fourth, friendship is the fifth, and wealth is a distant sixth. It's, did I reflect? Did I decide what money meant to me, what things meant to me, what was going to drive my life forward? That's the hard part of agency. I can't decide for you. I can just tell you, and Pat will tell them, that it's not acquiring things. It is having wealth, right? Those will set you up to make those decisions in a smarter way.
Mm-hmm.
And so
what are some actions we can take?
Yeah, well, first be aware of the hedonic treadmill. Be aware that, am I participating in this? And usually the first signal to me is you've already got that thing, right? You've already got clothes. You've already got a phone. You've already got a roof over your head. You don't need a new house. You don't need a bigger house. You don't need a new phone. You don't need new clothes. Your car works. It runs. It drives. It gets you where you need to go. You don't need a new car, right? And so being aware of the hedonic treadmill is really saying, is what I want duplicative of in functionality, not in form, in functionality of something I already have? The second is to get smart on what uses of money will make you happy. We did a whole episode on this, and the takeaways are this: spend on other people, not yourself. That'll make you happy. Spend on experiences rather than things. Why? Because it develops memories, and memories are the dividend of spending that keeps on paying. If you go ahead and you do a trip with somebody you love, and not a crazy trip, let's say you go over to the next state and you visit a city you've never gone to before, and you go nuts eating in 5 or 6 different restaurants, and then you walk around holding hands and you gaze at whatever there is to gaze at in that city, you'll remember it when you're old. You'll keep getting the joy from that spending, that experience over and over again, when the things will have gone to the landfill, the things will be dead, or the things will be forgotten on a shelf somewhere. Buy small pleasures rather than big ones. We think that we need the trip to the Alps to be happy, when the trip to this city and the next state will do just as much for our joy, right? We think that we need to go get a new house when painting the living room might make you just as happy, right? Small pleasures rather than big ones. And then delaying consumption. Delaying consumption is the opposite of taking on debt. If you want something, save up for it. Or if you want something and you have the money, spend the money, but have the thing not arrive in your life for a month or two. And when you do that, you get all the accrued pleasure of waiting for it to come. So I've got an example of this for you, of delaying consumption. And it's somewhat nonsensical, so feel free to judge me for it. Okay. So when I want something, I save for it, even though I don't need to. In other words, I could dip into my wealth at any given time and buy something that costs $2,000 or $5,000 or $10,000, and it wouldn't hurt me a whole lot. Right. It's not quite Brian Johnson, but it's, kind of the equivalent idea, if you will. I don't do that. I never go into my wealth to buy things. I save up for them again. Right. So right now I'm saving up to build a sauna.
Nice.
Because I know that by saving my $800 a month towards that sauna, in about, 8 or 9 months, I'll have enough money. And then I'll go buy the lumber, and then I'll build the thing, and I'll get the joy of creation, and I'll get the joy of anticipation, and I get the joy of saying, hey, Patrick, I'm saving for a sauna. So even if you can pay for it, save for it, and get smart on what uses of money will make you happy. The article that we talked about in that episode was, if money doesn't make you happy, then you probably aren't spending it right. Okay? Go ahead and look that up. We'll try and give you a link for it. And you have the episode in front of you that we talked about that?
Yep. It was from June of 2023. It's called Use Money to Buy Happiness. So if you scroll back a bit, you can find it.
Yeah, check that out. One of the other things I like to do is to think that the money that I save is not a penalty. I am not self-flagellating. I'm not denying myself something by saving money. What I'm actually doing is buying time. I'm buying agency. That's what savings is to me. You're buying time. And so if you want a background on that, check out a book called Your Money or Your Life. I think we've shouted it out several times by Vicki Robin and Joe Dominguez. But here's the upshot. You can equate your wealth with time. Okay, so here's how you do it. You divide your net worth, and ideally your liquid net worth, and we'll get to that in some episodes down the line, by your annual expenses. So let's say you spend $40,000 a year and you have $1 million. Okay? Ignoring compounding and inflation, when will you run out of money? Well, if I've got $1 million and I spend $40,000 a year, I have 25 years of freedom in the bank. 25 years of doing whatever you want. Now, let's imagine your net worth's $10,000 and you have $40,000 a year in expenses. You've got a quarter of a year of freedom in the bank. You've got 3 months off. Can you imagine taking 3 months off? When's the last time you did that? Right? And so for me, when I don't acquire things, when I save it instead, I'm buying that future freedom. And at some point, and this is one of the other hard parts, you get to forward that future freedom into right now. And you get to experience it. So measure your wealth in time instead of dollars. I think it's this really, really useful exercise, and it's very incentivizing to get you to continue with that behavior. The last one that will help you actionalize this, that's not a word, but we're going to...
Actionalize is not, but I like it.
I'm going to actionalize this. I like to add I's to things. I-Z-E. All right. Well, I'm going to verticalize this, recommendationize this thing here for you real quick. And I'd like you to turn off the faucet of advertising. And we talked about this as well in an episode about the low information diet. Dude, leave social media. You know what social media is? A platform to get you to look at advertising. That's what it is. 64% of $350 billion or $727 is being spent this year to get you to pay attention to ads, largely on social media and search engines. Leave. Don't look anymore. Okay. Pay for premium streaming, the ad-free version. Yes, they've got the best business model on earth. They get paid for advertising if you watch it. They get paid not for advertising if you don't. I highly recommend either starting a streaming service or paying for premium streaming. And then, choose ad-free podcasts if you can. I think that it is right now in the podcasting space the number one way that people monetize. I'm not saying that we never will have an ad on this. I hope that there are other ways to move it forward, but don't expose yourself to this. You do not need the latest health and wellness gadget that's being flogged to you on the thing. I guarantee it, even at the 20% coupon rate. And perhaps most important, feel outraged. Are you kidding me? You are being parted with your hard-earned money. You go to work to buy shit you don't need, and you're being prompted to do it by an endless flood of messages that says you're not enough. You're not good enough. You don't have enough. You'll never be enough unless you buy this insert stupid widget here. Be mad. It's okay. It's okay to be mad about this. You should be mad about this. Because the joy in your life will come when you connect with other people, when you have friendship. It will come when you know that your job is optional, that it's something you do because you want to, not because you have to. That's when you'll be happy. It won't be when you get that thing. And $1,100 is going to be spent this year making you try and think something else. Mm-hmm. That should make you mad, and you should act accordingly.
We're going to leave it there. That was fun. Thank you. Do not acquire things. If you want to get all of the behaviors and all the rules that we've talked about here, head to the website, optimalagency.co, and you can read short blurbs on each of them. While you're there, you can also take the HWT questionnaire. What is that? It's 60 questions across health, wealth, and time, designed to give you an honest assessment of where you currently stand across all three of these ingredients of agency that we discuss here on the show. Importantly, it will also give you specific directed advice and resources for how to improve where you are the weakest. You can get the HWT questionnaire by heading to optimalagency.co/HWT. And the link is in the show notes for easy and quick access. All right, let's wrap this conversation up. I'd love to give a recommendation too. I think we gave a couple recommendations, but maybe a few more specific recommendations on how to acquire or how to not acquire things. And so my recommendation, 2 documentaries from the guys over at The Minimalists, which is a project that's been going on for many, many years. I like them. I think sometimes they're a little bit too much, but generally speaking, I really like their overall approach to things and the message that they've been proclaiming for years. So they've put together 2 full-length documentaries over the years. The first that they put out, I forget the year, but it's for free. You can watch it for free on YouTube if you just search for Minimalism, the official Netflix documentary. It's a great place to start, but a little bit more in line with this conversation that we've been having today is a documentary they came out with probably 2 years ago now, and that is on Netflix. And so you can search for Netflix. It's called Less Is Now, and that is very specifically about acquiring fewer things, fewer of these non-essential things. So if you don't know the Minimalists, I recommend them. And those 2 documentaries are great places to start.
Nice.
What do you got for us? Oh, I want to throw one more in because we mentioned it, but I want to do a specific call out. The article on Norris, was Daniel Norris in ESPN is really good. It's called The Man in the Van. So if you search for it, The Man in the Van and ESPN, it'll pop up and it'll give you a really good sense of who he is. At least I think the article came out in 2015. So this was early in his career, but really, really fun. And it gives you a good picture of what you were talking about with the stealth wealth.
Yeah. And I'm not kidding. That guy's my hero. For real. Johnny's got a new idol.
What do you got for us?
You're going to still buy stuff that you technically don't need. Okay. Mm-hmm. And there's one other thing to think about, and that is the environmental impact of buying things that are new. When you do that, you're sending a signal to whoever manufactured it to make more of them. Okay. Contrast that to buying used things. Buying used things in the secondary person-to-person market, think Craigslist, think Facebook Marketplace, doesn't send that signal. What it does is it keeps things out of a landfill. It helps somebody else who doesn't need that thing anymore, and it matches somebody who doesn't need it with somebody who at least thinks they do. And so buy secondhand. And here's why we don't. It takes time, effort, and energy to find the right thing. But I want to give an example. Annie, and I would say and I, but let's be honest, I have watched from a distance as she has done all of this work, is redoing the library in our house. She is building built-in bookshelves, literally with wood from the lumber yard, and that is the only new thing in there. She's going to furnish it entirely with used items. And this is part of the mission. We're undergoing a home improvement process and trying not to buy anything new. Okay. So she's on Facebook Marketplace. You should see the couch that she showed me this morning. It was terrible, and we're not buying it. She got on this other site, and she might be mad if I tell you about it. It's really cool. It's called Auction Ninja.
Sorry in advance, Annie. We're blowing your spot up.
We're blowing your spot up, Annie. Auction Ninja does estate sales. Sales. And so if you want things with character, if you want things that are cool, if you want things that are not coming from a factory, but came from a factory, long, long ago, do this. I think that it's a great way to go about the world. You will at least spend less than you would have otherwise if you bought new. You'll keep some things out of the landfill, and you'll have fun laughing at the crap that people put on Facebook Marketplace. Benefit,
unexpected benefit. All right. Thank you. I think we will wrap it up there. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. Thank you for your ratings and your reviews. Thank you for the notes you send us. Thank you for the questions. You can learn more about Optimal Agency at optimalagency.co. We thank you, and we will be back next week for a new episode of Optimal Agency.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.